Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
Hello and welcome. We are Del and Debi's Mind, Body, Soul, the home of invigorating talk on all things to do with health and well-being. And before I introduce myself, I'm just going to mention that this is actually a call-in show. And our number is 323-284-7826. So if you have any questions or comments you want to make as you're listening to our fabulous guest today, then please go ahead and call in. And we're also interactive on Facebook. We have our Facebook page up, and if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in our Facebook page, and we'll have our guest address those too. So I am Del Jones. I'm one of your co-hosts, and I'm a certified transformational coach and a 3 principles teacher and practitioner. And I help my clients achieve psychological well-being in all areas of their life, regardless of their external circumstances. And next to me is my fabulous co-host.
Hello. Welcome. I'm Debbie Carlin Boyle, and I am certified as a personal trainer, a fitness instructor, and an integrative holistic health and wellness coach. And I help people find balance in their life with everything that feeds us in addition to the food on our plate. And having said that, we're going to talk about food on our plate today because today's guest, Laura Conley, is a superwoman of sorts. Laura is an elite and endurance athlete who has won numerous local and international competitions, which led her to become a personal trainer and nutrition expert with the aim of empowering people to improve their lives. More recently, Laura has focused on mindset and psychology because she sees the impact this approach has to overall health. Laura also holds a degree in biology, certifications in Muay Thai kickboxing, Schwinn cycling, Reiki energy healing, and NCEP holistic nutrition. So similar to what I do, which is so cool you have all this. So I told you, she's a superwoman. So today Laura's going to share with us the benefits of intermittent fasting, which versus other dietary theories. So will you please welcome to our show our guest today, Laura Conley.
Yay!
Welcome, Laura.
Welcome, exactly. So
I
I selfishly wanted this subject. Well, not just intermittent fasting, but also this sort of high-fat diet that everybody's doing right now. And that's the one I was saying can get very confusing. If you don't do it right, you just get fat. You definitely get high fat. But before we get into all that, we always like to hear a little bit about your background, how you grew up, and how that may have affected what you do today.
Well, that would take the entire show.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep
don't
it
worry.
short.
We'll keep you on
keep it
point.
short.
Yeah. We'll get to
little
our
background.
Yeah.
So being an athlete, I was always interested in getting better and improving my performance. And I was a runner. I was Muay Thai kickboxing. I was doing everything. And I started to put together how nutrition was helping me to run faster or better or worse. You know, there were days where I'd ate junk food and I felt really bad. So I kind of got into sports nutrition that way, and then I really got into supplements too. And that led me down the road for a while, and then I started to study nutrition just for clients to help them when I was training them. But I was noticing that it wasn't enough just to know sports nutrition because, let's face it, not everyone's going to be a marathoner,
an elite athlete,
right?
yeah.
And then a lot of people have kids and families and all that. So I had to go back and kind of rethink how I was approaching nutrition.
But let's go back for 1 second. Where were you born?
Yes.
Oh, that's
We're going
back.
way
That far
back.
back.
Yeah.
And were you born into a family of athletes?
Yeah. That's we kind of like to just touch on those
Yeah.
big beginnings.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Well, I was actually born in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I think we lived there for like 3 years. Then my whole family moved to Florida, Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
So we lived there for about 10 years.
So were water sports part of your life too, being in Florida?
I wouldn't say water sports. We had a swimming pool in the backyard, and my sister and I were like dolphins. Like every day, we
Okay.
just swam all day long.
Of course. Wow.
Not
Yeah.
for sport, just
Yeah.
for fun.
Yeah.
And, back in those days, kids just played outside all day long. So
What do you mean, like 20 years ago?
Thank you.
Those days.
Those days.
So we just
We'll talk
played
about
outside.
those days.
We just ran around all day. And I think just being an active kid, you actually get in shape. And I didn't do any organized sports really until later in life, until high school. I started running track.
Oh, okay.
So that was
Yeah.
your first.
That was your
Yeah.
first
First love.
Yeah.
competitive parlay into sports was
Yeah.
in high school.
Yeah, I was an equestrian my whole life. I
Okay.
rode horses, English, but I was never that competitive with it. I just loved riding. So I wasn't like a competitive athlete as a rider. I was just kind of enjoying it.
Yeah. So you weren't doing all those. Were
Yeah,
you
it's a
jumping? and
sport.
I
things
was
like that?
jumping and
Okay.
doing
Yeah.
all that,
Yeah,
but I
it's a
really
sport.
I enjoyed practicing more
Yeah.
than I actually enjoyed the horse
The,
shows.
the competing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So-
then, so what brought you from Florida to here to
My
LA?
parents,
Yeah,
my dad had
okay.
a job transfer. My dad was an architect, and so he got a job offer out in LA and moved us all out here, and it was the scariest
How
thing.
old were
old
you?
were you?
Yeah.
I would say I was probably about 10 or 12.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So young.
I
Yeah.
do remember it was the year of the Northridge earthquake.
Oh, okay.
And I moved
okay.
out here, and I was like,
93.
Yeah.
what just
That was
happened? I want to go back to
1993.
Florida.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh.
it was scary.
So-
And you moved out to the San Fernando Valley where the
Yeah.
Northridge earthquake
Where
was
it
really
was
felt.
big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
wow. And so
So what
the-
sports did you get into here?
That's when I started
So
getting
you
into
did the
running
track,
here.
yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to school? Where'd you go to?
I
I'm
went to
just curious.
Calabasas High School.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah, so
All
that's
right.
how I got into track and cross country running.
Uh-huh.
And it's funny because all my friends got into dance, and I'm a terrible dancer.
Yeah, you
No.
That was my
you need
daughter's,
rhythm,
yeah.
rhythm
You need
for
rhythm,
dance.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I heard an announcement on the radio, the school radio, and it was like, oh, cross country running team is open for applicants, and they needed women or they needed girls. And so I called and I said I was interested, and the coach called me back and he said, can you run a mile? And I said, yeah, I think so. He goes, great, you're on varsity.
Oh, they really needed some. All you had to do was say, "I think so."
Yeah. So that was the
That's
beginning.
good,
Yeah.
good. And that became. And what did you experience by becoming a competitive athlete? Did you get that runner's high, the endorphin
Oh, yeah.
high, and that
Yeah.
becomes addictive, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So-
I really enjoyed it. But you know what? In high school, it was also the social aspect that I enjoyed.
Yeah, being
And
on
I
a
think-
team.
Being on a team, making new friends. And I did enjoy the running, but I think I really started to enjoy the running more, like getting the endorphins and the runner's high later on when I was just kind of on my own training and enjoying it and connecting with nature.
Right.
In the beginning, it was more like, oh, we're hanging out with our friends as we run.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so did you go off to college and continue the running? And I know
That's-
you got into biology.
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's interesting. So what happened was I went off to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I thought about running there or trying out. And then I heard what their runners were running, the times, and I thought, oh, I can never run that fast. I'm not even going to try out.
Oh.
But I was always interested in boxing as a kid. I don't know why. I used to punch my little sisters.
well,
Good practice.
yeah.
Yeah. So they had an orientation at a kickboxing place. So I tried one class and I was hooked. And then I got into kickboxing and Muay Thai. So I did that throughout my college years. And I started competing and I did amateur fights, and
Oh.
I kind of stopped
cool.
running during that time because my coach wanted me to get faster and work on the agility. So
Yeah.
I didn't start running again until after college, like my last year.
And that was
I-
just running on your own.
On my
for your-
own.
Yeah.
And then
But
I
you competed in marathons, I
Right.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then I
Malibu.
started getting faster and faster just on my own. And one of my clients, he was working with an Olympic development team. And he said, I think you could be on our team. And I was like, yeah, right. I'm just running by myself. Like, And he said, no, I told our coach some of your times. And he says, you're good enough. So they invited me to come out and run with them one day. And I ran with their team, and I was so intimidated. Like, these are Olympic trainees.
Wow, yes.
And they were so nice
the
and
best of the
friendly
best.
and welcoming to me. And I did the workout no problem, and the coach offered me a spot. So
Wow.
that's how I got into running like, really competitively.
Yeah.
So I
And
was on that
that's when
team.
you realize there's a nutrition aspect to being an
Yes.
athlete.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't
absolutely.
just happen that you can
Right.
have that kind of.
And I think times have changed too, because I know that, they used to be told that you had to really pack on the carbs before
Oh, yeah.
those runs, and I'm sure you're not hearing that anymore.
It was all about, pasta the
Yeah,
night
exactly.
before and
Yeah.
carb
Yeah.
loading, and
Yeah.
it's just, that was silly. We didn't know.
So
Yeah.
and so. So now going back to where we were,
Yeah.
so the mindset change. What was the catalyst that really made you see that you needed to, shift diet?
Well, the weird thing was in college, I gained a lot of weight and I couldn't lose it. And I was working out. I was training at least 3 hours a day for Muay Thai. Sometimes I would go for like a little run or weightlifting. So I was working out like 3 to 5 hours every
And
day.
what were you
Wow.
eating? What type
Overtraining.
of diet did you
Dorm
have?
food.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
junk food and
Yeah.
Okay.
all that.
Yep.
And
it's
and I
so
was
big.
really frustrated because I couldn't lose weight. And
Yeah.
before then, I had always been skinny. I could eat whatever I wanted, and it didn't matter. And now all of a sudden, it was like, okay, well, I'm working out harder, but it's not doing anything. So maybe I need to change what I'm eating.
Yeah. So was that different from what you grew up in your household? Did you eat pretty healthily growing up?
Not
No.
exactly.
No. But you could still, but you were a different metabolism, different age,
Yeah.
different, you were a different time in your life. You probably hadn't reached puberty yet. That changes our metabolism
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think all
how
of that
we
came in.
process
Yeah.
our food. Yeah. So then
Well, and plus,
suddenly,
I'm sure your mum was, or whoever was doing the cooking at home wasn't dorm food.
Yeah. We did eat a lot of fast food in my house
okay.
because my parents both worked full time. So once I got my license, it was like, okay, go pick up some McDonald's for you and your sister, and like
Yeah.
you're good
Yeah.
for dinner.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fast
Yeah,
food.
okay.
And I think what you were saying, when I was so young, it didn't matter. I had such a fast metabolism.
Yeah.
But then I hit puberty and all things changed. and
That's
then
right.
also drinking alcohol in college, that packs
That's
on calories.
big time, as we know now. Big,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you're the perfect example of how food can make a big difference in everything, and you also could see that it was affecting how not only your performance but how you felt about yourself, which will also affect every other aspect of everything you do,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
will
if you're-
affect whether you win or lose sometimes.
Yeah.
So it was smart of you to see that and notice that and be able to shift it.
It took a lot of mistakes to learn
Well,
those
of
lessons.
course.
Life,
They weren't mistakes. They were signposts along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
guiding
we have
you to the right direction.
We have a lot of those that hit us, that knock us over sometimes.
Yeah, exactly.
Cold,
Yeah.
knock us out
Sometimes you run
cold.
into the signposts
Yeah.
before you
I
can
know.
read it.
You get a big black eye, but
Yeah.
so
yeah.
So it brought you to a point where you had an understanding of your own body, and then you thought, well, I can help other people too understand.
Well,
as
how did you? Yeah, so you gained the weight. So because sometimes you have to be really literal on the radio. What were some of the types of food you were eating, and what did you switch to when you started to lose the weight?
Great question. So what I was eating originally was like any kind of fast food. So a lot of just hamburgers and Taco Bell and
So fat and sugar and salt.
yes, lots
everything
of sugar
that was
too.
storing
I
itself as
loved
fat,
candy.
it would store itself and then turn into sugar, and then of course
Yeah.
that wreaks havoc on every.
Yeah.
Well, but a
every
lot
part
of
our
those
body.
sauces on those things too have so much sugar in them.
I know.
Sugar's
Even
hidden
ketchup.
everywhere.
I mean, people are having a hamburger thinking, "Oh, it's just protein," but
Yeah.
they're lathering it in
it's
sweet
processed
sauces.
It's processed food
Yeah.
too, so you never know all the chemical
Yeah,
ingredients that our bodies don't know what to do with.
Yeah, exactly.
They hang on to, they turn toxic. So it's like that movie Super Size Me.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So he was the perfect. He used himself as a guinea pig
Yeah,
and being
exactly.
a perfect example of how horrible it was.
Yeah.
So
what did you switch to?
switched.
So, I
And how did you
started
make the
this-
switch?
The slow switch. Well, you're right. It was processed food, all of it. And when I started switching, I switched to what I thought was healthier processed food. I did air quotes there.
Yeah.
Because I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll start having some lean cuisine frozen dinners. And all right, how about reduced fat potato chips?
Yeah.
I was being healthier.
Yeah.
And so that was the process that started, and I realized that wasn't working either.
Oh my God.
I still wasn't getting any weight loss. So
Yeah, no weight loss and no satisfaction.
nope, neither. So I think it was like one Christmas, I asked for a cookbook from my dad. I was like, okay, that's what I want for Christmas. And he gave me a cookbook, and I learned how to cook real food.
Oh, wow.
Like actual vegetables and chicken and make my own sauce from scratch. And the food was delicious, like amazing.
Yeah.
And then I started cooking for other people because it was so good. And I was
you're
proud
in
of myself.
control now of what
Wow.
you're eating and cooking it. You had their satisfaction in eating it
Yeah.
too.
So the
Wow.
weight just started to slowly fall off, and I didn't notice at first. And then my roommates were making comments, and I'll never forget when it really hit me that I had lost a lot of weight. My roommate came home and she said, "What are you dressing up like a gangster for?" And I said, "I'm sorry." And she's like, "Your pants are so baggy. You look like a gangster.
You're like a bag lady.
You need to go shopping and get new clothes." And then I
Wow.
looked down and I was like, I guess they are kind of baggy. I lost some weight.
Working.
It's working.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was learning how to cook real food for myself that really changed things.
Wow.
And then that's
Good.
when I wanted to start teaching people like, hey, what you think is healthy
Yeah.
is not.
No.
Yeah.
And did you notice at that time, I mean, you clearly weren't noticing quite how much weight you were losing, but did you notice a change in your performance, your athletic performance?
Yes,
Yeah.
I did notice, because I noticed as you get lighter, you get faster.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. So I just started getting
Absolutely.
faster and faster.
Yeah. Plus, you're taking the things out of your body, the chemicals out of your body that are blockages in themselves, whether
Yeah.
or not it's a weight gain or just,
Feeling sluggish
feeling
and
lethargic.
foggy
Yeah.
and-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You,
I
you
think I was feeling
cleared
tired.
everything out. You literally cleared your system. It sounded like.
Yeah.
So then you realize, so that brought you into the health and wellness business. Just doing these changes for yourself as an athlete, you realized you could help others too.
Yeah.
So how did that manifest? How did you get into the health and wellness? Did somebody offer you to teach a class or something?
Yeah.
That's usually what
Yes,
happens. Yeah,
exactly.
that's how I started.
At kickboxing,
Yeah.
my coach was like, hey, if you want to get free lessons with me and free membership here, why don't you just start teaching a couple classes a week, or like one class a week? It'll pay for your training. That was a no-brainer as a college
Wow.
student.
Yeah.
So I just started doing that. And then a couple of the other students were seeing me work out, and they just said, hey, well, can you train us? We'll pay you to train us. And I thought, sure. They said, just show us what you do. That's all we want to know. So I can show you what I do.
Yeah.
I wasn't certified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I just started
and they
showing
knew
them.
that though. They were willing to.
Yeah, they were paying
you
me like
charged
$15.
them. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
So I just started training them, and then teaching the kickboxing group class. And after college, I was kind of like, oh, I don't really know what I'm going to do with my degree. And I got a job offer actually at one of the studios down here in Culver City, at the movie studios, to run their gym and do training down there.
Oh, very cool.
So I thought,
Oh,
okay, well, that would be
that's
like an
nice.
in-between job to
Yeah.
figure
Yeah.
things out.
Now, did you have to get certified to do that?
I
though?
did,
Yeah,
yeah.
because they'll ask for your
definitely.
insurance, your certifications, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, they actually paid for me to get certified too. So that was a
that's
win-win.
nice.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness!
that
So they
is a
hired
win.
you before you were even certified.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
they
really
wanted
great.
you. That's good. You
Yeah.
must be
Yeah.
very impressive.
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
do.
Well,
I
having
know.
the undergrad, I think they liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that got you on the road to being in this industry,
Yeah.
and then you went on to getting the nutrition health coaching certifications.
Yeah.
What was that program you went through? The one that I mentioned at the
So
top
I've done
of the
a few
show.
different ones. The other thing I was going to say is in college, my last 2 years, I got really interested in nutrition there for the sports. And I started taking nutrition classes. And my counselor kind of said, you have a lot of nutrition classes here. You could minor in this and kinesiology too. And I said, well, what would that take? And she's like, 2 more classes.
Yeah.
So I took 2 more classes and I got minors in those.
Oh, good.
And so that also kickstart the nutrition and the biomechanics that I learned. But so the NCEP, it was more of a holistic nutrition course.
Yes. What does it
And
stand for?
National College of Exercise Professionals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was everything that I had learned on my own, just taught to us
Yeah.
through research. And I was like, oh, this is what I found out for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
It's
a
great
light
when
bulb
it's-
goes
yeah,
off.
yeah, it's like it's
I was right.
validating.
I was right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then the other switch was, okay, learning that fat wasn't bad for you.
Yeah.
That
And
there are
I-
good
Now,
fats.
Right.
so this was after college then?
Yes.
And do you mind me asking how old you were? Because you look so young. I
Yeah.
can't even get a gauge
know.
here. So I'm
I was
trying to
gonna ask
gauge
you
on
off
what
air.
year it was because
Oh, okay.
because it's always like, diets just change. That's what I meant with the
Yes.
confusing.
Yes.
What's in 1 minute is out the next. And we just keep
Fads.
getting these different messages and
Yeah.
then it all gets muddled up and then people do struggle. They're gaining weight and they flip-flop from no fat, high fiber, no carbs.
Because they want the latest and greatest fad that's out there and thinking it's going to be, that's
And
the
it's
answer.
not even just
you know?
sometimes that it's a fad. It's just like you say, just sometimes people evolve. Like, at one point fats were all bad for you and now they're good for you if they're the healthy fats. But so what year are we talking about that you started to hear that fats were good for you?
That's a good question.
Like, we'll say like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that.
Somewhere between 5 and 10 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's about the time that the mindset changed when the guidelines, the USDA
Exactly.
guidelines, started
Yeah.
to change, and they started to realize that that there is a difference between saturated fats and real fats, and that we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
That's what fats were good for us, and that we need to have that in our diet as much as we need to have the good carbs on our fruits and
Yeah.
our vegetables.
But
big
I
time.
remember, like when Atkins was really in what I want to say like 15 years ago, I remember
Yeah.
a friend of mine, she lost so much weight, but she literally limited herself to one broccoli floret a night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was meat, all different types of meats and creams and fats.
too extreme.
And exactly, it was so extreme, but she lost so much weight.
But it's
And-
not sustainable.
No,
either.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not. And it's I think, very unhealthy. But I think people got confused when fat became, in vogue again. It was like, oh, is it back to the Atkins? But you have carbs as well.
But
And
Yeah.
that's when
you have to
the weight, exactly.
distinguish, and that's why working with a coach, or it doesn't have to be a nutritionist, because some nutritionists still go by the old USDA
Yes.
guidelines, and they're misinformed because it's more of a medical, like a Western medical, than not a holistic approach. But when you work with someone like you or I, who understands the ratios of good fat and protein and good carbs, and understands how processed foods have to go out, and there are no two calories alike. We're not talking about calories. We're talking about health. We're talking about wellness. We're talking about how nutrients from our food actually sustain us and give us life.
It's
and
still
that's-
confusing for a
it-
lot of people.
Well, because there's always
Yeah.
which we're going to get into,
exactly.
but being what's kind of been in vogue in the last couple of years, which is the paleo, keto,
Yeah.
and now intermittent fasting.
Well, that's what,
So-
that's why I wanted to really, talk about this show, because as I say, I'm confused, and I know a lot of my friends are confused. And you guys have the benefit of, having
Having the
the
education,
education. So for the layman, how would you sort of define what is healthy? I mean, I know everybody's different, and I know it's different for everybody, but I still think there's like I said, just for layman's terms, how would you say? You said that you found out that not all fat is bad fat.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
starting there, what would you?
Well, what I learned, because I was scared of all fat.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, no fat, no oil on anything. So I learned that some fats are good for you, or it's okay. And I slowly started easing them in. Like, I would have 1/8 of an avocado. Like, all right, let's see what happens when I eat that, okay? If I don't die from eating a little bit of that, then maybe I can have a little more.
Yeah.
So that's what slowly introduced me back into fat and healthy fat. What I would say is unhealthy fat are the processed oils, like canola oil, soy, vegetable oils, those that are hydrogenated oils. Those are the bad ones. And I think now we've even proven that with trans fat being banned,
Yeah.
that we know that's the bad one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if you're starting to add those healthy oils, is there something else that you have to eliminate? So, because they are adding more calories, so you can't.
Processed food.
Well,
Yeah.
you say processed, but let's get let's get
Yeah.
more specific. So you would say, but not just processed. Some people don't eat processed food at all, and they used to eat a lot of carbs. and no fat, as you said. Well, I don't think you can start adding those fats and still eating those carbs.
Well, carbs come in different forms.
Well, I'm talking about
some
the
carbs
white.
are processed.
Yeah.
And like if you're talking about
Like a
vegetables.
potatoes
Oh, okay, so that
and
is a carb.
and yeah,
It will
that's a carb.
change.
You know, so I'm just saying, and you know, worse things, say, you know, pasta or bread. Even healthy homemade bread.
Well,
no
those are
preservatives.
Those are processed.
Those
There's
are
a lot
processed,
of
yeah.
ingredients in those.
So you have to, well, that's what I'm saying. Let's name the things that people have to start eliminating if they're going to start bringing those fats in. And
Yeah.
what should they be eating with those fats?
You go, Laura.
Yeah.
So to break it down, you know,
Yes.
anything processed,
Yeah.
it's easy to think of it like, okay, it has a label on it. It comes in a box or a package. It wasn't from the ground or a tree or alive. It came from someone made this
Yeah.
somehow. And that's really what processing is. Now, I'm sure there's healthy processed food out there because nowadays people are aware and they're making things healthier with, you know, raw ingredients.
Yeah, you just have
But-
to read labels.
Yeah,
which-
you got to read the label. And I think a lot of people are confused because when they look at the label of something, they just look at that box with the numbers and they might go to one thing that they're familiar with, like, oh, it has 100 calories. Or, oh, I see it has 3 grams of fat or 10 carbs. And they just look for that number. But I tell them, don't even look at that. Look at the ingredients list.
Yeah.
Read the ingredients list. What does it say? Can you pronounce it? Do you know what those things are? Like yesterday, actually, a girl came to me at the gym and she had a workout drink. She said, oh, it's a really good one. And I'm reading it. And
You look at the sugar.
most of the things on there are like, okay, monk fruit, that's nice, and this and that. But then it said natural flavors.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, well, do you know what natural flavors are? And she goes, no. And I
Do
said,
you know what they are?
I said,
There's no regulation on the
"There's
word
no
natural.
regulation."
Yeah.
And that's where they hide chemicals and other
Yeah.
things. And that was like the best of it. You know, there's other things there you can't pronounce. So if you read the label of something and you can't pronounce it or it sounds like chemicals, that's
Yeah.
processed.
That's
right.
so funny. My son is at CIA, the Culinary Institute, at the moment, and he told me a couple of days ago. He goes, "Do you know what natural flavors are made out of?" I don't know if he was pulling my
There's
leg.
a few different kinds.
Well,
Yeah.
we're not talking about the chemical ones. It's the anal glands of beaver or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that true?
it is true.
Oh my God! Did you know
Wait,
that?
why? No, wait. I may have heard it somewhere in my teachings and I didn't write it down.
It's
Wait, I would have
crazy.
heard about that.
It's beaver anal secretions.
Yes.
It tastes like vanilla, apparently.
And they
so
use
they
that.
use it to they used to use it to flavor.
So
like,
what do they
Can
do?
we have
Do
the
they-
visual to go
do
with that?
they-
we need your face.
Yeah, don't put a picture up.
Yeah.
Do they? So, what's the process? So, what they make it in like a powdered form to?
I
I
don't know
really
what
don't know.
they do with it or how
The
they
fact
get it.
it's
I have
in
not
there.
investigated
Oh
that.
my God!
I just
okay. So
know.
this proves what we're talking about.
Yes, don't
Read a
eat.
label, and if you don't understand what that ingredient is, and you don't know where its sources or where it came from, don't buy
eat it.
that.
Yes.
Don't buy that product. That's I always tell my clients perimeter of the market.
Yes.
Where your real whole foods are, and there's usually only one ingredient, and then look for the source. But the first thing you want to do is look at the ingredients and
Right.
see what it is you're eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only way you're going to be able, for your bodies are going to be able to process that food.
Right.
So
So while we're on the high
Yeah.
fat thing,
Yeah.
let's just go into the ketosis. What is ketosis? I can't even say it. Ketosis, because again, that can get confusing.
Yeah, so ketosis is when your body is in a fat burning state. So instead of using carbs and glucose for energy, you actually start to use ketone bodies for energy. And that's when you have to go really low carb.
Yeah.
So it actually takes a period of time to get into ketosis because you got to burn through all the sugar in your blood first before your body's like, all right, I guess I'm going to start making ketones and start to use these for energy instead. Now, people get that confused with ketoacidosis, which is what happens in diabetics. And that's different. That's when their ketone levels are really, really high. So there's a difference, and that's dangerous. But ketosis is really good for you. And I think our ancestors used to go into ketosis, when they were out hunting and there was nothing to eat for a couple days.
Yeah.
They had to keep going. So they learned their bodies use ketone bodies.
And so, how do people get into ketosis? Besides, I think you said, do you have to fast for a while, or
Well, that's the fastest way to get into
yeah,
it.
you can.
Yes.
But just going low carb, very, very low carb. So the average person probably around 20 grams of carbohydrate a day, which is very hard to do, actually.
And that's through leafy greens and things like that, as opposed to more of the
Vegetables.
crucifix vegetables and things.
Right. So you have to count every carb,
Yeah.
every calorie, just to make sure that you're hitting that. And stay moderate protein, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
the
some good
problem.
books out there that actually break it down for you in terms of amounts, and it's different. The ratios are different depending on your height and your weight, and that kind of thing.
And how
So-
active you are, too.
and how active your activity, which you're supposed to stay. I mean, there's a certain point that you can't be quite as active as you normally are, I guess, when you're when your body first hits ketosis.
Right.
But then you get back into this sort of, it's a high, really. It is. It's a great high.
But I mean, you can also get really dry mouth and smelly breath, can't you?
Well, that's the detox.
I'm the one that's bringing up all the gross stuff here.
That's the detox.
No one talks about that.
That's the
Yeah.
detox part of it, though.
Yeah.
There's a turnaround on that if you stay with it,
Yeah.
And some people, like a lot of cancer survivors, discovered being, doing the keto sort of way of life to clean up their cells, to clean up their act, to get into a healthier lifestyle, so they don't, go once if they're in remission, that they don't go back. Or
But then they also say if you have cancer, you shouldn't be eating that much protein. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but
It's
you don't have
just-
to eat large amounts.
Yeah,
to
so,
be in ketosis once you're
keto
there.
actually shouldn't be high protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you run the risk of actually converting the protein into glucose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if you eat too much protein, your body can turn protein into glucose.
So we're using all these terms, but say somebody wanted to get into ketosis and they wanted to do those, what was it, 20 grams? You said.
Yeah.
What does 20 grams of low carb look like? I mean, what would you
Again,
say?
it's
somebody would
different
eat?
amounts for different
No, I
heights
know,
and
we
weights.
understand that, but we're
Right.
just broad brush strokes here. So what would somebody maybe eat in a day to get there
Well,
without protein?
let's say,
Or very little.
Well, little protein.
Little protein.
So for breakfast, they could have like eggs with avocado, or they're all into bacon now. So bacon, and I would say, a lot of people are into the bulletproof coffee or putting butter and MCT oil into their coffee. So a lot of times that would be a breakfast for some of them. So literally just coffee with fat in it.
Yeah.
And
That's all you're
the
having for
idea is it
breakfast.
satiates you, so you don't go hungry.
No, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it can run the risk of getting in the proteins again if you're using cream or
Well, you can have protein, but
Yeah.
you just don't want to overdo it.
Right.
So
Well-
you're gonna be able to eat meat like chicken or fish or beef, no problem.
but with just lots of leafy
But-
greens or
But
something
with leafy
it?
greens and with a lot of fat with it. You just don't want to overdo the protein. You're not going to look
Yeah.
like a bodybuilder having 6 chicken breasts a day anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So the rule of thumb is just if you're kind of, not sure, the size of the palm of your hand is usually
yeah.
per sitting or per
serving,
meal,
yeah.
per serving. Yeah.
And what
And-
about exercise during that time? Because I know you mentioned something about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can definitely exercise, and a lot of people feel better when they're in ketosis exercising. And there's a few things though. So one thing is, in the beginning, you might feel a little bit weaker or more tired because you're not using the sugar for energy anymore. So your body's burning fat, which maybe means you're going to exercise at a lower exertion rate, but your endurance will increase. And this is really good for you because if you start to train that way and then you also start to train the high end, you kind of get both. So you want to be able to be, athletic in both ways. So you can do high intensity, but you can also have endurance. And I think being in ketosis, you can get that. You just have to train smart. I think that's where a coach really comes in because the confusion with that and trying to teach yourself all these little tricks is very challenging.
Exactly.
And somebody to be accountable to and stuff without being frustrated, because that's where quote unquote diets fail. And we're talking about a lifestyle change, really. I mean, if this is a kickstart into a lifestyle change and then you just go into, a good carbs, protein, and good fats lifestyle, that's all, it doesn't mean that you live
absolutely.
Well,
in
some
ketosis.
people want that sort of little help to get them there too. Just that little sort of knock a few pounds off, feel good
Yeah.
about themselves,
Yes.
and then make the lifestyle change. So you mentioned earlier that another way to get into ketosis is through the intermittent fasting.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how does that look too?
Yeah, let's
I know
talk
there's
about
different-
that.
Yes.
That's something I am not that up on. And I would
because
love
there's
to hear
sometimes
about
it's
it.
like 5-2 or don't eat between this time and this time.
And you get
I
into
like
the numbers thing, and I think people just look the other way, you know,
Yeah.
and don't do it correctly.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah,
us,
tell
tell
us.
us
many ways
the-
to do it.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
And really, again, it goes back to your body, knowing yourself. And you're going to have to try a few things, and you might not like it a couple days. You're like, you know what? That one didn't work for me. But intermittent fasting is just a period of time where you are not eating anymore. And it's usually longer than 12 hours. So the best way to start this for people, and I think we should even just naturally do it, is let's say you have your last meal at 8 p.m., you eat dinner. You don't eat again until 8 a.m. the next day or later.
That's why they
12
call it
hours.
breakfast.
Exactly.
It's breaking the fast.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's 12 hours of fasting right there.
I think most people do that. I mean, would you think people
Yeah.
would eat?
Some
I
don't.
don't
It
know.
depends
Some people
on-
have those midnight snacks,
Yeah.
but it's really good for your body to go a period of time without food, so you can clean out your digestive system.
But isn't there this sweet spot? Isn't it like 15 to 18 hours when it gets really good or something
Yes,
happens?
Kind of
Yeah.
got to get over the hump,
Yeah.
So,
right?
like,
What's that?
I think between 16 and 18 hours and beyond, you start to have other benefits. So you start to have autophagy and apoptosis.
Yeah, no, what are those?
So these mean that your cells go in and they kind of clean up all the debris in there. So when your cells are processing, it's kind of like if you're working and you're working really fast, you're throwing junk around and you just leave it there.
Yeah.
But then when you have a time later, you can go in and clean out your house. That's what your cells are doing. That's what your body's able to do. And then the apoptosis is the cells that are not healthy anymore, that are kind of damaged, they actually just die.
Oh,
And then they
wow.
leave because then new cells can grow. So that's what goes on after about 16 to 18 hours. There's also some really interesting research that shows that it resets your immune system. So people with autoimmune conditions have been seeing a lot of benefits from longer fast. I don't know exactly the mechanisms, but it somehow starts to regulate your T1 and T2 immune system to get them back in balance again.
So how
And when
long?
you're
So
saying-
if you
yeah.
do that, how often do you do that? So let's say you do it one day. Let's say you do get into that 16th, 18th hour,
Should we
and then you
clarify
go back.
what fasting is too first? Because some people
Yes.
think it's juicing, but
That's-
it's
Yes.
0 calories.
Okay,
Right.
Exactly.
yes,
Good
So
yes.
just
point.
tea or water.
It's not a juice
like
fast
black
that we're
coffee.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
So
calories.
it's
No, yeah,
0
no
calories
calories.
whatsoever.
There are
Right.
other kinds of fasts that people
Yeah.
are talking about. Like you can do a protein fast where
No,
you eat
yeah.
everything but protein.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
not what
no.
intermittent
Or-
fasting is. So when
Right.
we say intermittent, how often do we? So now the 16 or 18 hours have passed. Then we eat what after that? What would be a good thing to break the fast?
Right. So again, that's depending on the people. So if you are doing ketosis with this, then you'll probably have a high fat, healthy meal with like, the leafy greens and the protein, a lot of fat.
Okay.
If you're not doing
And when you say a lot of fat,
ketosis-
you're talking avocado or salad dressing
good.
made with a good
Nuts.
quality.
or oils,
Yeah,
nuts,
nuts, oils, yeah.
or even animal fat. Some people use like
Oh,
lard
ghee.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ghee is actually
Ghee.
butter. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But,
But-
isn't it? There's a difference, though,
clarified.
isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
It's supposed to
clarified.
be. It doesn't have the milk products in it, so
Yeah.
it's less
Yes.
sugar. Is that right? But I find it so sweet.
I don't know if it's less sugar. It's just it doesn't have the protein, so it's less allergic to some
Oh,
people.
okay.
For some people, yeah.
So and then so you go back to eating for how long, and then fast. When do you fast again?
So again, so let's say the example uses 16-8. So for 8 hours of the day, you're going to eat. And really, with
Not the whole 8 hours.
no,
You
but,
could.
but you-
Yeah.
There's no guidelines within that. That's also why it's confusing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's
There
basically
aren't
for 8
guidelines
hours,
within
you
that.
can eat whatever you want, and then 16 hours of no food.
Yeah.
That's
but when
all
you say
intermittent
eat
fast.
whatever you want, it's still sensible, unprocessed food.
Well, that
we
would be
eat.
ideal.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
can't guarantee everyone's doing that.
No, I know.
Well, I
exactly.
think it would be very taxing for your body for you to be eating processed food between that intermittent fasting and then have your body try to figure out what to do with all that
Yeah.
those toxins.
And I think the other thing that's challenging if you're not doing keto or a higher fat with intermittent fasting is your insulin levels are going up and down. And then when you are fasting, you're probably going to get really hungry and you're going to have some hormone swings.
That's what I'm saying. It's
So I
not
think,
your body. is gonna-
eating
your
healthy, balanced
hormonal-
during the time that
Yeah.
you're eating, like having some good fat. That way, when you do fast, your body's kind of steady baseline rather than the roller coaster that you were having when you were eating.
Well, you want to get the benefits that you're for the reason why you're doing it in the first place.
exactly.
But I've heard. I mean, I've seen people that have started to just eat one meal a day, basically. But during that meal, they'll have a good hamburger, French fries, and a glass of wine, and still lose a lot of weight on it.
Well, you can lose weight, but I don't know that you'll get all the benefits
of course
that you
not.
can get, like the mental clarity, just the good feelings that your gut healthy.
But I think if people are going to have a glass of wine, I think limiting it to that window and just having a meal and doing it like that once a day, as opposed to sort of multiple, eating a big lunch and then a big dinner and then a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just think if you just, there's certain things that maybe people do want to continue to doing, and I'm not saying have more than that or have a dessert as well, but just within reason. Yeah.
I was surprised. I've got a client, and she is recently beginning keto, and she loves the way she feels, and she's eating and she's exercising, and I checked in with her, and she has a glass of wine or two sometimes in the evening. And I said, well, doesn't that bump you out of ketosis? And she says, no. And I thought, wow, even I learned something new every day, because I thought for sure if you have some wine, you're going to get kicked out of ketosis, because alcohol is sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
But she
Pure
said, no,
sugar.
if she has it with a meal, she's fine.
Yeah.
Now, does she take the keto strips or something to let her know she's still in ketosis?
So she knows she's still in a high level of ketosis.
Yeah.
And
So yeah, you're right. If you have a balanced meal, you can still enjoy a little bit. Now again, everyone's different.
I was just going to say, everybody's
personally.
so individual
Yeah.
that could come up
So it
differently
may
for
not
somebody
work for all
else.
of us.
Yeah,
No, exactly.
But it's good that she's keeping track because she knows it's working for her.
Yeah.
And so she can
Yeah.
do it. Good for
Oh,
her.
she was not going to give up her
Yeah,
wine.
No, is it white or red? Because red is a little bit easier
it's
on
red.
the sugar. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's not so
Yeah.
high in sugar, which is good. So good. So there, it's such a craze right now.
Yeah.
Do you suggest that people work with someone like a coach that understands intermittent fasting, or gets a book that very much lines it out for you? Because to try to do it on your own, I would think would be very tricky.
I've read a lot of books. It is quite simple. I mean, it really is. I mean, they just give you different. Like I said, there's the
Different time
5
frames.
to, like, I can't do that one. I can't do the 5 days of normal eating
And
and
then
then
2
2 days where you're eating 500 calories. I'd rather do the extended, like, sort of finish dinner around, or not eat after 7 and not eat until midday. I mean, that's a great thing
Yeah.
for me. And I love exercising on an empty stomach. I really do.
Yeah.
Well, it's good. It's fasted cardio is one.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
you know, because we're both spin teachers, I try not, if I'm teaching in the morning, which all my classes are, I don't eat before.
Yeah.
Because then I get that fasted cardio high.
Don't you
and
feel
then,
so much better when you do that?
Oh, yeah, big
Yeah.
time.
I
Big time.
noticed
I can't teach on.
If I just wake up and I have water, sometimes just black coffee,
Yeah.
and I teach, I feel amazing.
Yeah.
And the days that I might have
fasted
a little
cardio.
snack or something, if I'm teaching later, I kind of feel a little sluggish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you get used to doing fasted cardio,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
your body really likes it.
No,
Yeah,
I do,
I
exactly.
tell my clients that all the time, even when they come to work out and weight train with me, because we do a lot of high intensity interval stuff with most of my clients. And I say it depends on when you wake up, because then we're talking about intermittent fasting. But if you've been up for more than 3 hours, then you should try to get some kind of protein or good fat or a combination of the two
I'll
before we
go-
work out.
I'll be up at 7 and not eat till 12:30.
That's a
And
long
I'm-
time to go
I'm-
with the exercise in there.
Yeah, I
you
do
know.
a beach workout and yoga, and I feel great. So I also wanted to talk about, because it can actually, you were saying that it can increase your metabolic rate as opposed to calorie restriction. Can you
Yeah.
mention that?
I've been reading about this lately
Yeah.
because originally I learned that calorie restriction does slow your metabolism down.
Oh, really?
And it
Okay.
does affect your thyroid.
Yeah.
And then the question now is, a lot of women say, well, what is ketosis or what is intermittent fasting going to do to my metabolism or my hormones?
Especially
or all
as we
those?
age, too,
Yeah.
because everything slows down automatically.
Yeah. So you're like, I want to
Yeah.
keep my metabolism
Yeah.
going here. I
Yeah.
don't want to slow it
Yeah.
down. And I guess because you're putting nothing in for that period of time, and your body just starts to burn its own fat. So you actually keep your metabolism going high, burning your own fat versus calorie restriction just means you're eating very little calories and you're kind of putting your body into starvation mode because your body's like, okay, well, I'm getting a tiny bit, I'm trying to burn that, then there's nothing left. Versus intermittent fasting where your body's like, I got the message, I've already started to burn my own fat, I got plenty of energy here to use, it's not a problem. And then you eat again. And so they were showing that some people have their metabolism go up from that.
Oh, wow.
And because it raises your growth hormone, your natural
Yes,
levels.
yeah.
And growth hormone is kind of what keeps us young and keeps the metabolism going. So by fasting, raising your growth hormone levels, you raise your metabolism.
Right.
And it was really interesting, too, because it spared muscle mass. People were keeping their muscle on versus when they were doing calorie restriction.
I was just going to say
they
that.
were losing
golden
fat
muscle.
and muscle.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating because in essence, you are still restricting calories by going with those windows without eating, but
Right.
it's just the pattern is
Right.
different and it tricks your body into not going into that starvation mode. And that's fascinating. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
interesting for me because I know that when I first started in college and I was doing the unhealthy diet of lean cuisine, I was calorie restricting
Yeah.
in a very unhealthy way.
Which most everybody
I think
did.
we all did at some
Yeah.
point. And then all of a sudden I got a hit on my thyroid and metabolism went down. And I was like, oh, well, that really sucked because you thought you were being healthy.
So you
Now
so
you said you got a hit on
Yeah.
your thyroid. How did it? You feel
Your
that way,
numbers
or did you
were-
get
my
it
numbers
tested?
went down. Yeah.
You had it tested.
Yeah.
Was it like bad enough that you felt that you needed to get it tested, or was
sluggish.
it?
Yes. Yeah, I had all
Oh.
the symptoms. I was cold all the time. I was sluggish. My hair was falling
Oh
out.
my gosh! Wow.
Yeah, it was like textbook.
Yeah,
And that
that's
was
thyroid
all
disease.
from calorie restriction.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh, that's really.
So it's interesting, though, that intermittent fasting doesn't have that same result. So,
That is interesting
Yes,
if you
it's
think
really,
the
really
science and
fascinating,
biology
yeah.
of it all.
Yeah.
You know, it
Yeah.
really is interesting because, when I've been a trainer for about 23 years now, and for a long time, people, what do you think of fasting? And I would say, don't do it, because usually it required juices and all kinds of
Yeah.
things. And I would say, hey, if you're trying to lose weight really fast, and you can find a good, safe fast, and because you have an event or something, then go for it. But if you're going to start fasting, unless you're doing it and you're working with an expert that's monitoring you, it's very dangerous. I think it's very dangerous.
I think we've changed
But
since
this is
then.
well. I
Yeah.
think we've learned a lot
Yeah, we
more.
have
Like
learned a lot.
like what we're talking about right now. To me, 2 years ago, I would have said, don't do it.
Yeah.
But now that I see the science behind it, I realize it works, and I understand that. And even with the cardio, I would never have said fasted cardio 5-10 years ago.
Well, there's a documentary. Have you seen the documentary, The Science Behind Fasting?
No.
No.
Oh, it's fascinating. You can get it. You can get it on Netflix or even
I don't
Amazon
have
Prime. A
Netflix,
little
which
plug
is probably
there.
why I didn't
No,
have
Amazon
it.
Prime has it.
Oh, I
but
have
it talks about fasting over the millenniums. I mean, religious people fasted.
Right.
Every religion
Same
has
rituals.
rituals. But it starts off in the 1900s and it follows these fasting clinics in Eastern Europe where people would go with diabetes, cancer, all of these things. And it was absolutely fascinating. People were healing themselves from incredible things. But they also do these tests on rats. And rats with cancer, if you fast them before giving them chemo, it actually, the body goes into protective mode. So it actually protects the healthy cells and the greedy cancer cells gobble up the chemo. So it's actually, you've got to watch it.
Makes
It's,
sense.
it's
It
really,
makes sense.
and this Dr. Walter Longo, he's in USC and he does all this study on it. So fasting is really, I think it was, people didn't understand it and that's why they had a fear of it.
Yeah.
But when you watch this documentary and you really go into the history of it, you see how incredible it's been. So
Before we
yes.
lose, Gail, can
Yeah.
you give us some tips for fasting? What your bullet point tips on what you think should be the most that you need to pay attention to if you're going to do this kind of fasting?
Well, again, I think having a good high-fat diet and lower carbs helps set you up. Because when you're eating fat, you're more satiated, so you don't have that hunger pain. And even if you get it, what helps me is realizing that it comes in waves. So you have a hunger hormone called ghrelin. And that's when your stomach is growling and you're hungry and you're like,
Right.
I need something. But that actually goes in waves, or like
Yes.
the tide coming in and out. So knowing that when it has its
over the
peak,
hump.
Yeah.
you get over the hump and then you can keep going. I don't know if you
Exactly.
guys have ever experienced when you do blood work in the morning,
Yeah.
but I remember I'd go to the doctor and you'd have to be fasted.
Yeah, to be fasted.
And
yeah.
I would be starving. I'd be sitting in the office waiting for the doctor, starving. And I'm like, I'm going to die. I'm going to die if I don't eat something. And just thinking about what I'm going to eat when I get out of there. So they take my blood and I leave, and then I go back and I get home and I'm like, I'm not hungry anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the example of that ghrelin shows is, okay, it comes in waves. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
So
know
you gotta,
that.
Yes.
and
you're
not
gonna fast.
feed it, literally
Yeah,
feed
Because
it.
people
when it
think
hits
it's going
you.
to
have
keep
to.
building
Water.
up, and it doesn't. Because I
Right.
did a lot of the fasting, and it does.
Yeah.
It just completely goes away.
Lots of water during that time.
But you also
too,
said
right?
electrolytes. That's a good idea too.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
if you're working out.
Yeah. Mhm.
Electrolytes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I guess your body requires a lot more of those electrolytes and salts when you're in ketosis. You burn through them quicker. So you want to be supplying that.
So
You
maybe
can-
the minerals as well, or just the,
yeah, I would
yeah.
say minerals.
Yeah.
And
A lot of times, what do you think about Himalayan salt?
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good.
I
That's really
recommend
good
that a lot.
to do. I do little shots of that in the
Yeah.
morning. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
really
I
good
put it
for
on
you.
all my food. I
Yeah,
just love
me
it.
too. I have it all over everything.
Yeah.
It's great.
But
It's
sometimes you have
mixed.
those other minerals that have other things beside, because the Himalaya sea salt is great, but it's missing a couple of
Yeah.
things.
I
Yeah,
put
so
trace
you just
mineral
add-
drops
Yeah,
in my
exactly.
water too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's what I
helps.
meant.
There's a lot of things
Yeah.
out there.
We are almost out of
Yes.
time, so we need some words of wisdom from
Yes.
you and some,
Final
final
words.
thoughts. Yeah, for
Final
our
thoughts.
audience.
Well, I would say, wow, you have to listen to your body. And you can read books all day long. You can listen to us. You can get a coach, and you can gain wisdom. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to just try and listen to your body because you know yourself the best.
No, exactly.
Right? And instead of going against what you feel is best for your body and you're just doing this new fad, I would say maybe try it, but also recognize what your body needs specifically. And if you know, all right, you don't do well with the 5-2-day fast, but don't force it. Do
No,
something that
exactly.
works for you. And go out and investigate. There's so much information out there now.
There is.
And
Yeah.
there's plenty
Try
of
different
really
things.
great books. Like
And
you
how do
said.
people get hold of you?
So my website is just my name, laurasconley.com.
But the S
Put
is
the
very
S in there.
important.
There's
It's very
another
important.
Laura
I
Conley
know.
who's a yoga
Yes,
person out
yes,
there.
yes.
So,
it's
yeah.
Laura S.
S.
Connolly.
Connolly,
yeah.
Remember that.
And on Instagram as well,
Yeah.
Laura
Yeah.
S. Conley.
Wonderful. And do you have anything coming up? Do you groups or anything like that? Or
Not right now. I'm running some private groups that are already finishing up. So
Okay.
when the next one comes available, it'll be posted on my Instagram and Facebook and website.
People should
Wonderful.
start following you.
Yeah, keep
Yes.
following.
Everything's so well said, Laura.
Yes.
You're just doing some great
I
work.
know.
So
Thank you so
thank
much.
you. Great
Testament for your-
connection. Yeah, look at this specimen here.
Yes.
So
gorgeous.
thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking the time to
Yes,
share with
it
our
was
audience.
wonderful.
We
Very
really appreciate
informative. I
it.
feel I have a
Yeah.
much clearer picture on what's
Yeah,
going on
yeah,
here.
Yeah, it's
All right,
great.
lovely.
Thank you,
Thank
Laura.
you.
And thank you, everybody. We're going to
Yes.
see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.